The entire court of Ashbourne had gathered to watch Leora Vane die in a wedding dress. They did not call it murder. Murder was a word for alleys, knives, and men without crowns. This was tribute. That made it legal. That made the nobles stand beneath dragon-bone arches with silver cups in their hands, pretending they had not come to see whether the cursed bride's touch would kill the Dragon King before the first vow was spoken. Leora stood barefoot on the black marble aisle, wrapped in white tribute silk so thin the winter air bit through it, her wrists bound with ceremonial silver ribbon, her dark hair loose around a face too pale from 3 nights without sleep. Around her throat hung the iron collar of House Vane, marked with one word carved in old flame script: cursed. She had been called that for as long as she could remember. In Black Hollow, no one touched Leora without gloves. No healer let her near the birthing rooms. No child was allowed to accept bread from her hand. Her mother died the night Leora was born, and her father lost his wolf the same winter. After that, every misfortune in House Vane found its way to her name. Crops rotted because Leora walked past the fields. A servant broke his leg because Leora looked at the stairs. A hunting dog went blind because Leora once stroked its ears. No one asked why curses always seemed most useful when powerful families needed someone to blame. Now they had sold her to the Dragon King, not as a bride of honor, as payment. King Malric Draven sat at the far end of the hall on a throne of black iron and fossilized dragon wings. He looked nothing like the dying kings in nursery songs. He was not old, not frail, not softened by illness. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carved from dark authority, wearing black armor beneath a cloak lined with raven fur. His hair was black as stormwater, his face sharp and severe, his eyes gold with a fire that seemed trapped behind ice. A jagged crown rested above his brow, not polished gold, but dragonbone dipped in ash metal. Every person in the hall feared him, yet Leora saw what they were trying not to see. His left hand shook, only slightly. Only when the great braziers flared with dragonfire along the walls. Each time the flames rose, pain moved through his body so quickly most would mistake it for anger. But Leora knew pain. She had been raised inside it. She knew the difference between cruelty and endurance. Beside the throne stood Lord Cassian Draven, the king's uncle, dressed in silver-black robes with a smile that never reached his eyes. He was the man who had negotiated the tribute, the man who had convinced House Vane that the curse could be useful if sent far enough away, the man who had announced to Ashbourne that a bride touched by death might satisfy the old treaty between Dragon Throne and border wolves. "Bring her forward," Cassian said. The guards pushed Leora. She stumbled once. A ripple of laughter moved through the court, delicate and poisonous. Leora lifted her chin before she could fall. That was the one thing Black Hollow had never managed to beat from her, the small, stubborn refusal to collapse on command. If they wanted her broken, they would have to do more than stare. Malric watched that refusal. She felt it before she understood it. His gaze did not slide over her like the others. It stopped, sharpened, measured. Not kindly, never kindly, but not lazily either. The Dragon King looked at her as if she were not the curse everyone had named, but a locked door he did not yet know whether to open or burn. The High Priest of Ash lifted a black chalice. By treaty of blood and flame, House Vane offers Leora Vane as tribute bride to the Dragon King of Ashbourne. If her curse proves false, the border debt is forgiven. If her curse proves true, House Vane is absolved of consequence, for the bride was received by royal choice. Royal choice. Leora almost laughed. Her father had signed the treaty with trembling hands and refused to look at her afterward. Her brothers had watched from the doorway as servants packed her into white silk. Her aunt had whispered that perhaps at last, Leora's cursed life might buy something useful. Useful. That was what she had been reduced to. A dangerous object wrapped in bridal cloth. The priest turned toward Malric. "Your Majesty, do you accept the tribute?" The hall held its breath. Malric rose from the throne. The movement silenced every whisper. He descended the steps slowly, black cloak dragging behind him, the dragonfire braziers flaring higher with every step. Leora felt the heat reach her skin. Beneath it came something else, something no one had warned her about. A pull inside her ribs, faint but undeniable, like a sleeping wound recognizing another. Malric stopped before her. He was close enough now that she could see a dark vein of gold beneath the skin at his throat, pulsing like trapped flame. Not a jewel, not paint, a wound. His voice was low. "They say your touch kills." Leora looked up at him. "They say many things when I am not allowed to answer." A hush fell. Cassian's smile thinned. Malric's expression did not soften, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest, perhaps. Or warning. "You are allowed to answer now," he said. "No," Leora replied quietly. "I am allowed to speak because everyone here expects my words to be the last sound I make." Someone gasped. The priest stiffened. "Bride, remember where you stand." "I remember exactly where I stand," Leora said, "in a hall full of people hoping my death will prove them wise. For the first time." Malric almost smiled. Almost. Then the far wall of the throne hall shook. A sound rolled through the stone beneath their feet. Not thunder, not drums, a dragon's breath. The court went pale. Cassian stepped forward quickly. "The beast should remain below." Malric's head turned. He woke? Before anyone answered, the iron doors behind the throne groaned open from the inside. A massive black dragon dragged itself into the hall. Leora forgot how to breathe. The creature was enormous, ancient, and ruined with sickness. His scales were black, like cooled obsidian, but cracks of dull red flame ran across his chest and throat as if something inside him had been burning for too long. One wing hung low. His eyes, once perhaps bright as molten gold, were dim and fevered. Guards scattered away from him. Priests lifted charms. Nobles fled behind pillars. Malric went still. The dragon looked past everyone, past the throne, past the king, straight at Leora. Her heart struck once, hard. The pull inside her ribs became pain. The dragon took one staggering step toward her. Then another. Malric moved as if to block him, but the dragon gave a low sound, not threat, not command, but grief so deep the entire hall seemed to darken around it. Leora's bound hands began to glow. White gold light seeped through the ceremonial ribbons. Cassian whispered, "Impossible." The dragon lowered his massive head before her. Then a voice filled the hall, not spoken by mouth, but heard in bone, blood, and flame. "Queen." Every dragonfire brazier turned white. For a moment, no one in the throne hall dared breathe. The word had not been loud, yet it had filled everybody in Ashbourne like fire poured into bone. Queen. The dying dragon had not growled it, not roared it, not shaped it with tongue or teeth. He had sent it through blood, through stone, through the white dragonfire burning in every brazier. Nobles clutched at each other in terror. Priests dropped their charms. Guards pointed spears at Leora, with hands that shook badly enough to make the silver tips tremble. Leora stood frozen before the dragon's lowered head, her bound wrists glowing brighter under the ceremonial ribbons. She did not feel like a queen. She felt like a girl sold in white silk by a family relieved to be rid of her. She felt cold, hungry, exhausted, and so frightened that even her breath seemed too dangerous to release. Yet the dragon looked at her not with fear, not with suspicion, but recognition so raw it nearly broke her. King Malric Draven stepped between her and the court. The movement was small, but it changed the whole. His body blocked half the spears from reaching her. His face remained hard, his jaw carved tight, but Leora saw the confusion he could not fully hide. The dragon had spoken to her, not to him, not to the king whose bloodline supposedly ruled all flame in Ashbourne, to her. Lord Cassian recovered first. This is witchcraft. The word struck the court like permission. Yes, one noble whispered. A death curse. She has turned the beast. Kill her before the bond completes. Malric's hand closed around the hilt of his sword. No one moves. Cassian turned sharply. Your Majesty, the dragon named her queen before witnesses. If the court believes a cursed tribute can command royal flame, your throne is finished. Malric did not look away from the dragon. Then the court will learn to believe carefully. The dragon exhaled, and the force of that breath swept across Leora's bare feet. Heat moved up through her body, not burning, but searching. The glow beneath her ribbons pulsed once. A memory flashed in her mind so quickly she nearly staggered. A woman in red ash walking through a field of dead dragons, her hands shining white gold. A black egg cracked open beneath moonless fire. A child crying inside a ring of burned roses. Then it vanished. Leora gasped. Malric heard it. His eyes snapped to her. What did you see? The question frightened her more than the court. I don't know. Answer me. I said I don't know. The glow faded slightly, as if the truth itself had settled between them. Malric studied her. Suspicion sharpened his expression, but so did something else. Fascination, unwilling, and dangerous. The high priest lifted his ash-black staff. The tribute must be tested. If her curse has reached the royal dragon, the old laws demand purification. Leora knew what purification meant. Every cursed child in Black Hollow knew. A clean word for fire. A sacred word for killing whatever frightened men in robes. Her stomach turned. The dragon lifted his head just enough to growl. The hall shook. Malric placed one hand against the dragon's jaw. The contact should have looked commanding. Instead, it looked painful. The gold vein at Malric's throat pulsed darkly, and for one heartbeat his knees seemed almost to weaken. Leora saw. So did Cassian. That was when she understood the second danger in the room. The Dragon King was not only hiding a dying dragon, he was hiding that the dragon's sickness lived inside him too. Cassian stepped forward, voice smooth as a drawn blade. Your Majesty, for the good of Ashbourne, remove the bride from the hall. And do what with her? Malric asked. Contain her. The word made Leora's mouth go dry. Containment was what powerful people called cages when they wanted to sound civilized. Malric looked at her again. You came as tribute. I was sent as tribute, she said. A faint stir passed through the court. His eyes narrowed. There is a difference to the person being sold, yes. Something flickered in him. Not softness, not yet. But the hit landed somewhere under the armor. Cassian's voice hardened. She speaks boldly for a cursed bride. Leora turned her head toward him. I have been called cursed all my life, my lord. It loses strength when men use it every time they need a woman to carry the cost of their fear. The court hissed. Malric went very still. For a moment, Leora thought she had gone too far. Perhaps she had. But if this hall intended to burn her, she would not spend her last breaths sounding grateful. The dragon's golden eye lowered to her again. The white fire round her wrists brightened. Malric saw it. Everyone saw it. Enough, he said. The tribute ceremony is suspended. The priest paled. Your Majesty, suspended. No one argued with the second word. Malric turned to the guards. Take her to the Ember Aviary. Cassian's eyes flashed. The royal aviary? The dragon called her queen. I will know why before anyone names her witch. Leora wanted to feel relief, but the royal aviary was not safety. It was a deeper chamber inside the same beast. Still, it was not the purification fire. Not yet. The guards approached. The dragon growled until Malric murmured something in an old tongue. The beast lowered his head reluctantly, but his gaze stayed fixed on Leora as the guards led her toward the side passage. As she passed Malric, he caught her bound wrist. The touch was brief. It should have meant nothing, but the moment his fingers closed over the silver ribbon, pain flashed through his face, and the glow beneath Leora's skin surged into his hand. His breath caught. Her vision blurred. She saw him as a boy, kneeling beside a wounded black dragon hatchling. His palms burned raw from trying to keep it alive. She saw a crown placed on his head before he was ready. She saw a woman with silver eyes pressing a curse into his chest while whispering, "Your true queen will destroy you." Leora stumbled backward. Malric released her, as if burned. The court did not see the vision, but Cassian saw the touch. He saw the king's reaction, and his smile vanished. In the corridor beyond the throne hall, Leora heard the nobles erupt behind them. Witch, queen, curse, tribute. Her name became a dozen weapons in a dozen mouths. The guards dragged her down a spiral stair toward the Ember Aviary. Heat rose from below, thick with smoke and dragon sickness. Leora's wrists still glowed beneath the ribbons, but now another mark had begun to burn faintly under her skin, hidden just below her collarbone. A dragon scale, white gold, alive. And somewhere behind her, in the throne hall, the dying dragon roared her name. The Ember Aviary was not a cage. It was a cathedral built for something too ancient to kneel. The chamber opened beneath Ashbourne, in a vast circle of black volcanic stone, its ceiling lost in smoke, its walls veined with sleeping fire. Iron balconies clung to the upper levels, where royal healers, dragon wardens, and armed guards watched from a careful distance. At the center lay the black dragon, his enormous body curled around a pool of dull red embers, one torn wing folded awkwardly against his side. His scales should have been glossy as obsidian. Instead, they were cracked and fading, red gold light leaking from beneath them like a furnace dying behind broken glass. Leora forgot the guards. She forgot Malric's court, Cassian's smile, the word queen burning through her bones. The dragon was in pain, not the clean pain of a wound. This was old pain, repeated so often it had become part of him. His breath scraped across the chamber floor. Every exhale shook ash from the walls. When Leora was pushed through the gate, his golden eye opened, and the entire aviary changed. The dragon lifted his head. The guards behind her raised their spears. Leora stepped forward before fear could stop her. "Don't." One guard grabbed her arm. "You do not command us." "No," she said, staring at the dragon's trembling jaw. "But if you point silver at him again, he will burn you before he remembers he is dying." The guard's grip loosened. The dragon rumbled. It was not approval exactly, more like recognition. Then Malric entered. He came alone, without crown or uncle, though the black armor still made him look less like a man and more like judgment given shape. The guards bowed. Leora did not. She was too tired, too frightened, and too angry to remember court habits. Malric noticed. His gaze moved from her face to her bound wrists, where the ceremonial ribbon still glowed faintly. "Leave us." The nearest warden stiffened. "Your Majesty, she may be dangerous." "Yes," Malric said. "So am I." No one argued. When the gate shut behind them, the sound echoed through the aviary like a verdict. Leora stood between the Dragon King and the dying beast. suddenly aware of how alone she was. No court to witness, no priest to interrupt, no Cassian to smile while tightening the noose. Only a king whose touch had shown her a curse, and a dragon who had called her queen. Malric stepped closer. "What did you see when I touched you?" Leora's pulse tightened. "You were a boy." His face hardened. "You were with him," she continued, looking at the dragon. "He was small then. Hurt. You burned your hands, keeping him alive." Malric said nothing. "And a woman cursed you." Leora's voice lowered. "She said your true queen would destroy you." The gold vein at his throat flared dark. The dragon made a low, broken sound. Malric's hand closed slowly into a fist. "Who are you?" There it was again. Not who, but what, wearing different clothes. Leora's chin lifted. "I am the woman your court bought to die in white silk." "That is not an answer. It is the only one I have." He moved closer, and the heat of him reached her before his body did. Dragonfire lived under his skin, unstable and wounded. Leora could feel it now, but enough to know that touching flame hurt him, and ruling through it hurt him more. "You carry a mark," he said. Her hand went to her collarbone. She had not meant to move. His eyes followed. "Show me." "No." The refusal came fast. Sharp, instinctive. Malric went very still. Kings were not told no. Not in their own aviaries. Not by tribute brides. Leora expected anger. Instead, she saw restraint tighten across his face like a chain pulled hard. "Why?" he asked. "Because every man who was asked to see my curse was looking for proof I deserved what came next." The words hung between them. Something shifted in his eyes. He did not apologize. A man like Malric Draven would not know how to apologize quickly without making it sound like command. But he stepped back, half a pace. The dragon's head lowered toward Leora, slowly enough not to frighten her. His breath stirred her white silk robes. She looked into his golden eye and saw not a beast, but a memory trapped behind sickness. Black wings over a burning city. A white gold woman placing her palm against a dragon's chest. A line of queens erased from banners. A small girl with dark hair hidden beneath a cellar floor, while soldiers shouted above. Leora swayed. Malric caught her elbow. This time, the vision came harder. Not his childhood. Hers. A cradle covered in ash-colored cloth. A woman whispering, "If they call her cursed, she may live." Fire outside the window. A dragon screaming. A man's voice ordering every bride of the white flame bloodline found and burned. Leora tore herself from Malric's grasp, breath shaking. "No." Malric's voice softened by a fraction. "What did you see?" "My mother lied." The dragon rumbled low. Leora pressed a hand to her collarbone. The hidden mark burned beneath her skin, brighter now, impossible to ignore. "The curse was not put on me because I kill what I touch." Malric watched her with dangerous focus. "Then why?" A voice answered from the upper balcony. "Because her blood heals what your throne destroyed." Leora turned. Lord Cassian stood above them, one hand resting on the stone rail, his silver-black robes untouched by ash. Beside him were 3 royal wardens, and a priest holding a chain made from pale metal that drank the light around it. Malric's face turned lethal. "I ordered everyone out," Cassian smiled. "And I ordered the truth preserved." The dragon tried to rise. The pale chain snapped outward. It struck the floor before the dragon's claws and erupted into a circle of cold white flame. The beast roared, but the sound broke halfway into pain. Malric staggered as if the chain had burned through him too, one hand flying to the gold vein at his throat. Leora understood then. The dragon's sickness was not only sickness, it was a leash. Cassian looked down at her. The vain girl was supposed to die at first touch, a clean tragedy, a cursed bride proving her curse. Instead, the beast named her. Malric drew his sword. You poisoned him. I preserved the kingdom from a dying bloodline. You are my bloodline. Cassian's smile thinned. No, I am what remains after you let sentiment rot the crown. The wardens moved behind Leora. Malric stepped toward her, but the chain circle flared. Pain shot through him. The dragon roared again, trapped between rising and collapsing. Cassian lifted his hand. Bring the bride. The warden seized Leora. She struggled, but one pressed cold metal against the mark beneath her collarbone. White gold fire burst through her skin. The entire aviary went silent. The dragon lowered his massive head, even inside the chain circle, not in weakness this time, in worship. Cassian's face went pale. Malric stared at the glowing dragon-scale mark over Leora's heart. And through the chamber, the dragon's voice came again, deeper, clearer, impossible to deny. Last queen of the white flame. The words struck the ember aviary, like a bell buried under centuries of ash. Last queen of the white flame. Leora could not breathe. The mark over her heart burned through the thin tribute silk, not as a wound, but as a memory waking beneath skin. White gold light spread from the shape of a dragon scale, tracing delicate lines across her collarbone and down her bound wrists. The wardens holding her stumbled back, as if her body had become too sacred to touch. Above them, Lord Cassian's face lost all its polished certainty for one naked second. That terrified her more than his cruelty. He knew what she was. Malric stood beyond the circle of pale chain fire, sword in hand, his black armor glowing red from the dragon's weakened embers. Pain still moved through him whenever the chain tightened around the dragon. But his eyes did not leave Leora. Suspicion had not vanished. Neither had fear. But something else had entered him now. Something far more dangerous for a king. Belief. Cassian recovered quickly. Do not listen to the beast. Sickness makes dragons dream. The dragon's golden eye narrowed. Malric's voice was low. You knew her bloodline. Cassian smiled, but the smile looked strained now. I know many dead bloodlines. That is how kingdoms survive, Your Majesty, by remembering which ones must remain dead. Leora looked down at the mark blazing over her chest. The court had called her cursed because people fell ill around her, because gardens withered near her windows, because dogs whined when she passed, because every living thing seemed to react to her presence. But what if none of it had been death? What if wounded things had been reaching for her without knowing how? What if her so-called curse was not killing what she touched, but drawing hidden rot to the surface? The dragon moved his head toward her. Slow, desperate. The pale chain flared again. Malric staggered, one hand going to his throat where the gold-black vein pulsed violently. Leora felt the pain through the mark, and this time she understood its shape. Dragon and king were bound together, but the bond was infected by command magic. Every time the dragon resisted Cassian's chain, the punishment passed into Malric too. Leora stepped forward. Cassian's eyes sharpened. Hold her. The wardens hesitated. Hold here, he snapped. Two men grabbed Leora's arms. White gold light flared under their hands, and both cried out, not burned, but shaken by something inside themselves being forced into truth. One dropped to his knees, whispering, I did not want to bind the beast. The other staggered back, pale. My lord ordered it. We all knew. Cassian's expression turned cold. Weak men mistake confession for virtue. Malric heard enough. He drove his sword into the pale chain circle. The aviary exploded with white sparks. Pain slammed through him, and the dragon at once. The dragon roared. Malric sank to one knee, but he kept both hands on the sword and forced the blade deeper into the chain fire. "Leora," he said through his teeth, "if your blood heals what my throne destroyed, prove it." The command should have angered her. It did, but beneath it was a plea he did not know how to speak. She looked at the dragon, at the suffering beast who had called her queen before any human being had called her innocent. Then she looked at Malric, the king who still did not trust her, but had placed his own body against the chain to give her one chance. "I am not your weapon," she said, his eyes lifted to hers. No, that single word changed something. Leora crossed the chain circle. The pale fire rose around her ankles, but the white gold mark over her heart answered. The flames bent away. Cassian shouted for the priests to stop her, but the ash priest froze, staring at her as if he had seen a ghost from a forbidden scripture. Leora reached the dragon's head. He lowered it until his brow touched the floor before her. Up close, she saw the depth of his suffering, old scars beneath his scales, burns that had never healed, runes cut near the base of his horns and hidden with black ash. He was not dying because age had taken him. He was dying because generations had used the royal bond like a throne chain. She placed both hands against his brow. The aviary vanished. She saw the first white flame queen standing beside a dragon made of dawn, swearing that dragons would never be ruled as beasts. She saw kings after her grow afraid of a bond they could not command. She saw Cassian as a younger man in a hidden chamber, kneeling before a silver-eyed sorceress, accepting a curse meant to sever Malric from the dragon if he ever found his true queen. And she saw her own mother, not cursed, but fleeing with an infant whose blood could undo that curse. Leora opened her eyes. Cassian had not brought her to Ashbourne because he believed she would kill Malric. He had brought her because he feared she might save him. White fire burst from her palms into the dragon's skull. The chain circle screamed. Malric gasped as the poison in the bond rose to the surface, black veins spreading under his throat and jaw. Leora felt it all. The dragon's pain, the king's curse, the old command magic wrapped around them both. She could burn it, but not alone. She looked at Malric. "If I break this, it will hurt you." His mouth curved faintly despite the agony. "Most things worth surviving do." "No," she said. "Listen to me. You must choose it. Your dragon cannot be freed if you still believe he belongs to you." The aviary fell silent except for the chain's hiss. Malric looked at the dragon. For the first time, the king's face broke not in weakness, but in grief. "He was all I had." The dragon's golden eyes softened. "That is not ownership," Leora whispered, "unless you make it one." Malric lowered his sword. Cassian shouted, "If you release the royal bond, the throne will no longer answer you alone." Malric turned his head slightly. "Then perhaps it should stop answering cowards." He placed his bloodied hand over Leora's on the dragon's brow. "I choose the bond freely," he said, "and I release what was made by fear." The white flame became unbearable. The chain shattered. The dragon rose, not healed completely, not yet, but unbound. His wings spread through the ember aviary, scattering ash, fire, and broken silver. Cassian stumbled backward, horror twisting his face. Then the dragon lowered his head to Malric, and after that, to Leora. This time, every warden in the aviary saw it. The Dragon King had not lost his beast. He had gained a queen the throne had tried to bury. The shattered chain fell across the ember aviary in smoking pieces, each link dissolving into pale ash before it touched the stone. For the first time since Leora had entered Ashbourne, the air did not feel like it belonged to the throne. It belonged to the dragon. The great black beast unfolded his wings slowly, painfully, with the trembling strength of something waking. After years beneath an invisible weight, fire returned to the cracks in his scales. Not the sick red glow of a wound, but a deeper gold threaded with white flame. The wardens dropped their spears. One priest began to pray under his breath. Above them, Lord Cassian Draven stood on the balcony with his hand gripping the rail, his face stripped bare of elegance. Malric rose beside Leora, unsteady but alive. The gold-black vein at his throat had faded to a thin scar of light beneath the skin. He looked at the dragon first, as if he could not trust the sight unless he stared long enough to make it real. The beast lowered his head toward him, and something passed between them that no court could name. Not command, not ownership, but recognition. Leora felt it through the white flame mark over her heart, a living thread no longer strangled by fear. Then Malric turned toward his uncle. "Who placed the curse in my bond?" Cassian's mouth tightened. "Your sentiment blinds you. That creature did not free your dragon. She altered the bond. She has made herself necessary." Leora lifted her chin. "You were the one who made him suffer. I made him useful." The words dropped into the aviary like poison. Even the warden stared. Cassian saw his mistake and straightened, drawing his dignity back around himself like armor. "Ashbourne was collapsing when your father died. Malric was too young, too attached to that beast, too willing to believe dragon loyalty was love." The border pack smelled weakness. The council whispered succession. "I did what had to be done to keep the throne from being ruled by a boy and his pet." The dragon growled. The sound made several men kneel. Malric did not move. That stillness was worse than rage. "You chained my dragon through me. I preserved your crown. You poisoned my blood. I delayed your ruin." "And Leora?" Malric asked, voice quiet. "Why bring her here?" Cassian looked at her then, and hatred finally showed itself cleanly. "Because every prophecy the old ash priests buried said the white flame bride would return when the Draven bond began to die. I searched every border house, every forgotten line, every girl called cursed by frightened villages. House Vane was hiding exactly what I needed." Leora's stomach turned cold. "You knew." "Of course I knew." Cassian's eyes narrowed. "Your family thought calling you cursed would keep you alive. Fools. It made you easier to find." A memory flashed through Leora. Her father refusing to meet her eyes when he signed the tribute treaty. Her aunt crossing herself when the black carriage arrived. The servants packing her in white silk like a corpse prepared for display. Had they feared her curse, or feared the men who knew it was not one? Malric stepped forward. "You sent for her to die. I sent for her to prove the old line was dangerous. A cursed bride kills the Dragon King at his own altar. The court panics. I take regency. The border wolves bow, and the white flame dies with her." Cassian smiled without warmth, but the dragon spoke too soon. The words revealed the entire shape of the trap. Leora had not been tribute. She had been bait. Malric had not been the buyer. He had been the intended corpse. The dragon had not ruined Cassian's plan by recognizing her as queen. He had saved her life. The wardens shifted uneasily. Cassian noticed. "Do not look so shocked. Every kingdom is built on necessary deaths." Leora's hands curled into fists. "Necessary to whom?" "To those strong enough to rule after them." The dragon's wings flared. Malric raised one hand, stopping him. That restraint cost him. Leora could feel it. The newly freed bond burned with the dragon's rage, and Malric wanted to answer it with his own. But he did not. He looked at Leora instead, and for the first time she saw the question he would not speak before his enemies. "What do you choose?" Her answer surprised her. "Not here," she said softly. Cassian laughed. "Mercy?" "No." Leora looked up at him. "Witness." Malric understood. He turned toward the aviary gate. "Open the court." The wardens hesitated only a moment before obeying. The great iron doors groaned open, and sound rushed in from the corridors beyond. Nobles arguing, priests chanting, guards trying to contain rumors already breaking loose. The dragon had spoken queen before the full court, but the truth of Cassian's betrayal had been hidden below. Leora knew what powerful men did with hidden truth. They buried it, renamed it, or called it dangerous. Not this time. Malric faced the nearest guard. Summon the council, the border envoys, the ash priests, and every noble still brave enough to stand under my roof. They will hear Lord Cassian explain why he cursed the royal dragon bond. Cassian's face went pale with fury. You would drag royal blood before common judgment. Malric's eyes hardened. You dragged a bride to my altar, to die. Cassian lifted one hand. The priests beside him moved at once. They struck the balcony floor with black ash staffs, and hidden runes ignited along the aviary walls. Leora felt the chamber turn against them. Not fully, Cassian's magic was weaker without the chain, but enough. The volcanic stone split open in thin red lines. A circle of dark flame rose around Malric, Leora, and the dragon, trapping them in the center. Cassian's voice rang out. If you insist on witness, then let the court witness the truth I intended. Let them see the cursed bride consume the king. The dark flame bent inward. Malric staggered as the old curse inside his blood flared again. Not dead, only wounded. The dragon roared, slamming his claws against the burning circle. Leora reached for Malric, but he caught her wrist before she could touch the fire. Do not. You will burn. So will you. Cassian's smile returned. Touch him, girl. Save him again. Show them how your white flame binds kings. The trap was cruel, because it used what she was. If she healed Malric before the gathered witnesses, Cassian would claim she controlled him. If she did nothing, the king would fall, and Cassian would call her curse proven. The court was already gathering outside the aviary doors, drawn by the rising fire. Dozens of eyes watched from the corridor. More arrived every second. Leora looked at Malric. Sweat stood at his brow. The dark vein at his throat had returned. Pain shook through him, but his grip on her wrist remained gentle. Even now, he was trying not to let his survival become her chain. The dragon lowered his head behind them and spoke through the flame. Choose together. Leora understood. She turned her wrist in Malric's hand until their fingers interlaced. Not healer and dying king. Not weapon and crown. Together. If they call this control, she whispered, then give them something truer to fear. Malric's eyes met hers. Through pain, something almost like a smile touched his mouth. And what is that? A king who chooses to be saved. The white flame mark over Leora's heart erupted. Malric drew her hand to his chest willingly. Before the court, before Cassian, before the priests and trembling guards, the Dragon King bowed his head and let the cursed bride place her palm over the wound in his blood. White fire entered him, not as possession, as consent. The dark flame screamed away from them. The old curse rose from Malric's throat in black smoke, twisting into the shape of a silver-eyed woman before shattering under the dragon's roar. Cassian stumbled on the balcony as the runes he had hidden in the aviary walls burned backward into his own hands. The court saw. The priests saw. The border envoys saw. Cassian had not exposed Leora. He had exposed himself. Then the black dragon stepped through the dying flame, lowered his massive head before Leora, and spoke a second word that made every noble in Ashbourne fall silent. Witness. The word witness traveled through the Ember Aviary like a command older than kings. Not a command to kneel. Not yet. A command to see. The black dragon's voice entered the stone, the iron balconies, the bones carved into the arches, and the bodies of every noble crowding the corridor beyond the open gates. One by one, the people of Ashbourne stopped whispering. They looked at Leora, at Malric, at Cassian on the balcony with burned runes crawling up his hands, and at the fading circle of dark flame, he had summoned to make a cursed bride look guilty before the court. No one moved first. That was the strangest part. Truth did not always arrive with triumph. Sometimes it arrived so suddenly that people stared at it, waiting for someone powerful to rename it into something easier to swallow. Cassian tried. He gripped the balcony rail, his face pale but still proud. Do not be fooled. The beast speaks through corruption. The bride's flame has entered the king. You saw it. You all saw it. She has placed her hand over his heart and made his fire answer her. Leora felt the court shift around that word. Made. It was such a small word and such a dangerous one. Cassian needed them to believe she had taken control, because if they believed Malric had chosen her touch freely, then the old story collapsed. Cursed bride became healer. Tribute became queen. Uncle became traitor. Malric stepped forward before she could answer. He was still weakened. Leora could feel the tremor beneath his control where the last of the curse had torn through him, but his eyes had cleared, and when he faced the gathered court, he did so not as a man pretending pain did not exist, but as a king refusing to let pain be used against someone else. She did not make me answer, he said. I chose. Cassian's jaw tightened. You were under her spell. Malric lifted his burned palm. This mark is mine. The oath was mine. The choice was mine. Leora looked at him despite herself. In the tribute hall, he had looked at her as if she were a dangerous object. In the aviary, he had demanded answers as if truth belonged to him by crown right. Now he was placing responsibility before witnesses, not to protect his pride, but to remove the noose from her throat. It was not forgiveness. It was not love, but it was something more solid than either could have been this soon. It was a beginning. The black dragon lowered his head closer to the court. Ash drifted from his wings like falling night. The king speaks true. The oldest ash priest dropped his staff. The sound cracked through the silence. Cassian turned on him. Pick it up. The priest did not move. His eyes were fixed on the dragon, wide with terror and wonder. He has not spoken to the court in 17 years. A murmur spread. Malric's face changed for a heartbeat. 17 years. Leora felt the grief of it through the white flames still braided faintly between them. A boy king, a silent dragon, an uncle who called control survival. A bond turned into a weapon so slowly that pain became custom. Cassian saw the court slipping away and struck where fear still lived. If she is white flame, he said, voice ringing from the balcony, then all of you know what that means. Her bloodline once claimed dragons could choose beyond the crown. If she lives, no rider bond is safe. No throne bond is certain. Every dragon in Ashbourne may turn its head from its master and ask whether the old queens should rule again. The nobles recoiled. That fear was real. Leora could not dismiss it. Men and women in that court had built their houses around dragon favor. Border envoys had sworn treaties to flame. Priests had built doctrine from obedience. If dragons chose freely, then the kingdom would not simply heal, it would change. And change frightened the powerful more than cruelty ever had. Leora stepped forward. Malric's hand moved as if to stop her, then held still. She noticed. So did he. I do not want your throne, she said. The court looked at her, as if her voice itself were a flame about to spread. She stood in torn white tribute silk, with the white gold scale mark glowing over her heart and ash on her bare feet. She looked nothing like a queen from old paintings. No crown, no jewels, no army. Only the dragon behind her, and a truth no one could easily bury. I did not come here to claim Ashbourne, she continued. I was sold here because my family feared The name they gave me. Cursed. Useful. Dangerous. I have been handled like a bad omen since the day I was born. If my blood is old, it was hidden from me. If my flame heals, no one taught me. If your dragon called me queen, then perhaps he saw something all of you were trained not to see. Cassian laughed coldly. And what is that? Leora looked up at him. That power is not the same as ownership. The black dragon rumbled. Malric's gaze fixed on her, sharp and unreadable. Leora continued before fear could steal the words. If dragons choose, then kings must become worthy of being chosen. If bonds are real, then they should not need chains hidden inside them. If your throne collapses because a dragon is allowed to speak, perhaps your throne has been too fragile for too long. The court went silent again, but differently now, not shocked. Listening. Cassian's face twisted. Pretty words from a bride who has not governed a single winter. No, Leora said, but I have survived men who call harm necessary. That landed. Not loudly. Deeply. Malric turned toward the captain of the royal guard. Take Lord Cassian into custody. The captain hesitated. Only a moment. But a moment was enough for Cassian. He drew a black crystal from his sleeve and crushed it in his fist. The ember aviary convulsed. Every dead rune in the walls ignited at once. The balconies shook. Nobles screamed as the stone beneath Cassian split open, revealing a hidden stairway spiraling down into darkness below the aviary. Cold wind rushed upward, carrying the smell of old blood and buried dragonfire. The black dragon recoiled. For the first time, Leora felt fear from him. Malric drew his sword. What have you done? Cassian smiled through the blood running down his burned hand. I gave Ashbourne one last chance to choose a ruler strong enough to survive truth. From the darkness beneath the aviary came the sound of wings. Not one pair, many. The dragon lowered his head beside Leora, his golden eye burning with warning. The chain dead are waking. The sound of wings rising from beneath the ember aviary was wrong. Living dragons did not move like that. Their wings carried weight, breath, heat, pride. What climbed from the hidden dark below sounded hollow, like leather stretched over bones, like old chains scraping across stone after centuries of silence. The nobles at the gates began to retreat, but the black dragon spread one massive wing across the open entrance and blocked them from fleeing, not to trap them for slaughter, to force them to witness what their kingdom had buried. Leora stood very still as cold wind poured up from the broken stair. The white flame mark over her heart burned brighter, not with power, but warning. Whatever was below knew her blood. Worse, her blood knew it. Malric stepped in front of her. Stay behind me. The words came from instinct, not arrogance. She heard the difference now. Still, she did not move back. If those things answer white flame, hiding behind you will not help. His jaw tightened. You are newly awakened and untrained, and you are wounded and half-cursed, less than before. That is not comforting. For one brief, impossible heartbeat, his mouth almost curved. Then the first dead dragon emerged from the stair. It was smaller than the black dragon, but still enormous enough to fill the lower arch. Pale bone showed through torn scales. Silver chains were fused into its neck and wing joints, each link carved with old ash priest runes. No true fire burned in its throat. Instead, a grey light flickered between its ribs, cold and obedient. Its empty eyes turned toward Cassian. The royal uncle lifted his burned hand. Kneel, he commanded. The dead dragon obeyed. Horror moved through the aviary. Priests fell back. Wardens crossed themselves. Even Malric went still. Leora understood at once why the black dragon feared them. These were not spirits, not memories. They were old dragon bodies, preserved beneath the aviary, bound after death so their obedience could be used if living dragons ever rebelled. Cassian looked down at the gathered court with triumph. This is the strength your soft king would deny you. Dragons that do not question, dragons that do not choose, dragons that serve the crown beyond death. Malric's voice was ice. You call this rule. I call it insurance. The black dragon roared. The dead dragon did not flinch. Another climbed from below, then a third, smaller, broken, chained, their wings dragging, their bodies lit by cold gray flame. The court recoiled in terror as they gathered behind Cassian like an army of desecrated kings. Leora's stomach turned. She felt no fear from the dead dragons. That was the horror. No fear, no pain, no will, only emptiness shaped into obedience. The white flame inside her whispered, not in words but in grief, release them. Cassian pointed toward Leora. There is your queen, Ashbourne. Ask yourselves what her mercy brings. Living dragons turning from kings, dead dragons waking from their rightful rest. A white flame bride in the heart of your throne. If she is not ended now, every law of flame becomes sentiment. A border envoy shouted. And if she is ended, what then? We bow to corpses? Cassian's eyes flashed. You bow to order. Malric raised his sword. No. They bow to fear wearing a crown. The dead dragons spread out. Cassian did not need to order them to attack yet. Their presence alone was a threat. If Malric moved against him, the dead would burn the court. If Leora used her flame, Cassian would call her the danger. Again, he had built a trap where every path made her look guilty. The black dragon lowered his head beside Leora. His voice entered her bones. They were mine. Images struck her. A younger black dragon flying with others above Ashbourne, wings cutting through stormlight. A silver female dragon with laughing gold eyes. A red-scaled hatchling tumbling through clouds. Then war. Betrayal. Chains. Death not allowed to be death. Leora's eyes burned. Malric saw her expression. What did he show you? His dead. The answer changed his face. Cassian lifted both arms. Choose, nephew. Let the cursed bride command the living, or let me prove the old crown still has teeth. The dead dragons opened their jaws. Grey fire gathered. The court screamed. Malric moved toward Cassian, but Leora caught his wrist. No, they will burn the whole. Not if they remember. They are dead. Yes, she whispered. But they were not always empty. Malric stared at her, then at the dead dragons. What do you need? That question steadied her more than any order could have. Time, she said. He turned to the black dragon. Give her time. The dragon roared and launched himself at the first dead beast. They collided in a storm of black fire and grey flame. Malric followed, sword blazing with dragon fire, not commanding the beast now, but fighting beside him. The court scattered behind pillars, as living flame met dead obedience. Leora walked toward the center of the aviary. Cassian saw her. Stop her. One dead dragon turned, jaws glowing gray. Leora raised both hands. Not to attack, to call. White flame rose around her, soft and bright, touching the ash-streaked floor. She let it move through the old bones, the fused chains, the cold runes carved by men who feared dragon choice more than dragon death. The first dead dragon froze. Its grey fire flickered. Leora closed her eyes and listened. At first, there was nothing. Then, beneath centuries of command, she found a sound. Anama. Auric. She spoke it aloud. The dead dragon's head jerked. Cassian's face blanched. Do not. Leora spoke another name that rose from the white flame. Sereth. The silver female dragon stopped mid-strike, hollow eyes flashing gold for one impossible second. The black dragon roared. Not in battle now, but grief. Malric lowered his sword, understanding dawning across his face. Their names were erased. Names are harder to chain when remembered, Leora said. Cassian screamed for the dead to burn her. They did not. One by one, Leora spoke the names. The white flame returned. Orek, Sereth, Valro, Ithan, Maelra. Each name struck the aviary like a bell. Each dead dragon shuddered as grey fire turned gold, then white, then soft as falling ash. Their chains cracked. The court watched in stunned silence as the army Cassian had raised began to kneel, not to obey, but to be released. Cassian stumbled backward. No, I preserved them. Leora looked at him through the white fire. You used them. The black dragon stepped beside her, wounded but towering. Malric came to her other side, breathing hard, blood at his mouth, sword lowered. Together, they faced Cassian. The last chain around the silver dragon shattered. Her bones dissolved into white sparks, rising toward the smoke-dark ceiling. One by one, the others followed, not destroyed, but freed. Their light circled the aviary, then poured into the living black dragon. His wounds glowed. His broken wing lifted higher. His eyes burned clear for the first time. The court fell to its knees. Cassian stood alone on the balcony, surrounded by ash where his dead army had been. Then the black dragon spoke one final word before the entire kingdom. Usurpe. The word usurper did not echo. It settled. It entered the ember aviary with the weight of a crown placed on a grave, and made every noble understand that the dragon had not accused Lord Cassian of ambition alone. He had accused him before flame, bone, blood, and memory. The court, already kneeling from the release of the chained dead, remained frozen on the ash-streaked floor. Priests bowed their heads. Wardens lowered their weapons. Border envoys stared up at Cassian, with the dawning horror of men realizing they had nearly trusted a corpse-maker with a kingdom. Cassian stood on the balcony, his silver-black robes torn by sparks, his burned hands curled around the rail. For one moment, he looked old, not weak, not repentant, but old in the way lies become old when daylight finally reaches them. Then, his face hardened, and the politician returned. A dragon's accusation is not law, he said. Malric lifted his sword. No, but it is witness. And what will you do with witness? Cassian demanded. Let a cursed tribute bride decide the fate of royal blood? Let a beast name kings and unname them. You would hand Ashbourne to old superstition because she touched your wound and called it healing. Leora felt every eye return to her. That was Cassian's last weapon. Not strength, but story. He could no longer deny his chains, his hidden runes, his dead dragons. So he would make the court fear the woman who revealed them. She felt the old instinct rise in her, the instinct to shrink before accusation, to make herself smaller so others would not call her dangerous. Then, the living black dragon shifted behind her, lowering one wing like a shield. Malric did not step in front of her this time. He stood beside her. That mattered more. Leora looked up at Cassian. You are still trying to make them look at me so they stop looking at what you did. A stir moved through the court. Cassian's eyes narrowed. And what did I do, bride? You cursed the king's bond. You chained the royal dragon through pain. You preserved dead dragons beneath this aviary and called it order. You brought me here to die because my blood could undo what you built. Her voice did not shake now. You did not protect Ashbourne. You built a throne that could only survive if every living thing in it was afraid to choose. The black dragon rumbled. The court listened. Cassian's expression sharpened into hatred. You know nothing of ruling. No, Leora said. but I know what it means to be ruled by fear." The words landed among the servants first. Men and women at the back of the aviary, ash carriers, dragon grooms, basin keepers, low-born healers, all the ones who had spent years tending wounds they were not allowed to name. One by one, they lifted their faces. Malric turned to the captain of the guard. "Arrest Lord Cassian." The captain hesitated again. This time, Leora understood why. It was not loyalty. It was law. Cassian was royal blood, elder blood, a regent in all but name. To arrest him inside the Ember Aviary required more than royal anger. It required the court to accept that the old structure itself had failed. Cassian smiled when he saw the hesitation. "There, even your own men understand what you risk." Malric's hand tightened around his sword. Leora placed her fingers lightly against his wrist. He stopped, not because she commanded him, because he remembered what rage would give Cassian. Leora stepped toward the center of the aviary. The white flame mark over her heart glowed softly now, not with explosive power, but with the steady warmth of a living ember. "Then let the court decide what it has witnessed." A shocked murmur swept through the hall. Cassian laughed. "You invite judgment from the same nobles who came to watch you die?" "Yes," she said. "Because if they choose fear after seeing truth, then at least no one can say they were deceived." Malric stared at her with something close to awe, though he quickly hid it beneath grim restraint. The oldest ash priest rose slowly from his knees. His hands shook as he faced the court. "I witnessed Lord Cassian use forbidden dead bond runes beneath the royal aviary." A dragon warden stood next. "I witnessed the dead dragons obey his command." Another warden lifted his head. "I helped maintain the hidden chains. I was told it was crown security." The captain of the guard looked at Malric, then at Leora, then at the black dragon whose eyes burned like judgment. At last, he drew his sword and laid it flat across both palms. "I witnessed the royal dragon name, Lord Cassian Usurper." One by one, voices rose. Not all noble, not all brave, but enough. The border envoy from Black Hollow, Leora's birthland, stepped forward last. He was the man who had delivered her tribute papers. His face was pale with shame. House Vane knew the girl's curse was old blood. "We gave her to Ashbourne, because Lord Cassian promised our debts would vanish if she died here." Leora's breath caught. She had suspected it. Hearing it still cut, Malric's gaze darkened. Her family sold her to execution. The envoy lowered his head. Yes, the word should have broken her. Instead, it made something clear. She had spent her life longing to be proven harmless so they would love her. But they had known, or suspected enough, and had sent her anyway. She was done begging the guilty to call her innocent. Cassian saw the court slipping completely and made his final move. He pulled a blade from his sleeve, not toward Malric, not toward Leora, but toward his own palm. The black crystal dust, still embedded in his skin, flared. The dragon recoiled. Malric shouted, "Stop him!" Cassian drove the blade into his hand and slammed his blood against the balcony rail. Hidden runes ignited across the entire aviary, not pale this time, but red, black, deep, and hungry. The floor shook. The dead dragon ash rose again, not as bodies, but as a storm of bone-white sparks pulled violently toward Cassian. "If I cannot rule living dragons," he snarled, "then I will take the throne with their ghosts." The ash storm spiraled around him. Leora felt the released dragon names cry out, not in fear, but in violation. The black dragon spread his wings to shield the court, but the runes were fed by royal blood. Malric stepped forward, ready to burn them out through himself. Leora caught his hand. "No," she said. "Together." He looked at her, and this time there was no hesitation. Together, they walked into the red-black light. White flame rose from her heart. Dragonfire rose from his blood. The black dragon lowered his head behind them and added his living flame. 3 fires braided into one: queen, king, and dragon. Cassian screamed as the stolen ash tore free from his control. Leora did not strike him. She spoke the names again: Auric, Serith, Valro, Ethan, Maelra. Each name became a flame. Each flame became a wing. The ghostly ash turned from Cassian and rose toward the open ceiling of the aviary, where dawn was beginning to stain the smoke. The hidden runes shattered. Cassian fell from the balcony onto the lower stone, alive but broken. His hands burned clean of magic. No one moved to help him. Malric stood over his uncle, sword lowered but ready. Lord Cassian Draven, by witness of court, dragon, priest, border, and flame, you are stripped of regency, blood authority, and all claim to Ashbourne. Cassian looked past him to Leora. His voice was a rasp. She will unmake you. Malric did not look away from her. Then I will become something worth remaking. Cassian lay on the lower stone of the Ember Aviary, breathing hard, his silver-black robes ruined by ash and shattered runelight. Around him, the court remained silent. Not the silence of confusion now, but the silence that comes when a lie has finally run out of rooms to hide in. The dead dragons were gone. Their names, once buried beneath royal stone and priestly lore, had risen through the broken ceiling of the aviary and vanished into the gray edge of dawn. Only a few sparks remained, drifting through the air like pale fireflies before fading into peace. Leora stood beside Malric, with the white flame mark still glowing over her heart. Her body trembled from the force of what she had done, but she did not lower her head. Not to Cassian, not to the court, not to the family envoy who had admitted House Vane sent her to Ashbourne knowing she might die. Every piece of her old life had been stripped in public, and instead of making her smaller, it had left nothing for fear to hold. Malric looked down at his uncle. Take him. The captain of the guard moved at once this time. So did 3 wardens. No hesitation remained. Cassian tried to rise, but whatever dark magic he had used had burned itself out through his hands. He was still dangerous because men like him were always dangerous while they could speak, but the power that had wrapped around the dragon bond was gone. As the guards seized him, Cassian laughed weakly. You think this ends with me? You think nobles who watched a tribute bride become a queen will sleep calmly tonight? You think border wolves will accept a throne that lets dragons choose? You have not saved Ashbourne. You have cracked it open. Malric's expression did not change. Then we will see what was rotting inside. Cassian's eyes moved to Leora. He will need you until the court fears you too much. Then he will call you dangerous, as all kings do. The words were poison because they were possible. Leora felt Malric go still beside her. The court waited for her to flinch. Perhaps Cassian did too. He wanted one final wound, one last seed planted in the space between her and the Dragon King. Leora looked at him steadily. If he does, I will not need you to warn me. For the first time, Cassian had no answer. The guards dragged him away through the aviary doors, past nobles who stepped back as though betrayal could stain their robes by proximity. When he disappeared into the corridor, the black dragon released a low breath. It moved through the chamber like the settling of a storm, but the danger did not leave with Cassian. Lord Edron, one of the southern councillors, rose carefully from his knees. He was not Cassian's ally, or at least not openly, which made him more dangerous in a different way. His face was pale, but composed. Your Majesty, the court has witnessed treason. It has also witnessed old magic returning through a border bride, sold under false terms. Before Ashbourne can accept what has happened here, there must be law. Malric turned. There will be. Then let the bride be contained until her place is determined. The word returned, contained. Leora felt every muscle in Malric's body tighten. The dragon's golden eyes narrowed. The court seemed to shrink around her. Lord Edrin lifted a placating hand. Not harmed, not condemned, contained. For her safety and ours. The white flame line has been absent for generations. We do not know what powers she carries. We do not know whether the dragon's recognition places her above the crown, beside it, or against it. Murmurs rose again, not hatred. Fear. Fear was harder to fight than hatred, because fear always believed itself reasonable. Malric took one step forward. You will not cage her with cleaner language. Edrin bowed his head. Then name her, Your Majesty. Name her before the court, before every border envoy, before every priest who watched the dragon bow. If she is not prisoner, what is she? The question struck the hall. Leora felt it too. Cursed bride, tribute, white flame queen, healer, threat, witness, weapon. Every name had been placed on her by someone else. Even queen had come from the dragon before she understood the cost of it. Malric looked at her. This time, he did not answer for her. It was a small mercy, a difficult one, the kind that looked like restraint instead of rescue. Leora stepped into the center of the aviary. Ash clung to the hem of her white tribute silk. The ceremonial ribbons around her wrists had burned away, leaving faint gold marks beneath her skin. She looked at the court that had come to watch her die and saw uncertainty staring back. Men and women who wanted to believe in what she had done, but only if believing did not cost them too much. Priests whose doctrine had broken in front of them. Wardens who had spent years serving a dragon they had never truly heard. Border envoys already calculating what free dragon bonds might mean for old treaties. I was brought here as payment, she said. So let us begin there. The hall quieted. House Vane sold me to Ashbourne because Lord Cassian promised debt forgiveness if my curse killed the king. The Ash priests allowed a tribute rite that made my death legal before anyone knew my name. The court accepted the word cursed, because it was easier than asking who benefited from it. She turned slowly, forcing them to meet her eyes. I will not be contained for surviving the trap built around me. No one spoke. I will not be named queen so quickly that the word becomes another cage. And I will not let the white flame line return as a story men use to frighten children away from women with power. Her voice softened, but did not weaken. I choose to stand as witness of dragon consent, until Ashbourne learns what that means. The black dragon lowered his head. Malric's eyes remained fixed on her, fierce and unreadable. Lord Edrin's brow tightened. Witness has no standing in royal law. Then make it law, Malric said. Every head turned to him. The Dragon King walked to the center of the aviary and stood beside Leora, close enough for the court to understand alliance, far enough not to claim what she had not offered. By right of flame and throne, I name Leora Vane White, flame witness of Ashbourne. No dragon bond shall be sealed, severed, or renewed without witness. No dragon shall be bound by hidden rune, dead chain, blood curse, or command magic. Every rider bond in this kingdom will be tested before dawn's end. The court erupted. That will weaken the army. That will insult noble riders. That will invite rebellion. Malric's voice cut through them. Good. Let every false bond reveal who has been riding loyalty and who has been riding fear. The dragon rumbled approval. Lord Edrin looked at Leora. And if the dragons refuse half their riders? Leora answered before Malric could. Then half your riders were never chosen. The words traveled like fire through dry timber. A warden near the lower gate removed his helmet with shaking hands. My dragon has not looked me in the eye in 6 years, he whispered. I thought obedience was enough. The old ash priest lowered his head. We taught you it was. Malric looked toward him. That teaching ends. Then came the sound of wings outside. Not dead wings, living ones. The broken ceiling of the ember aviary opened to the dawn sky, and beyond it, dragons circled Ashbourne's black towers. Some were small courier dragons. Some were massive war beasts. Some had not flown in years. Their riders stood in panic along the tower bridges, holding reins and command chains that suddenly looked far too thin. The black dragon lifted his head and released a roar. The dragons answered. One by one, they landed across the palace roofs, walls, and tower platforms, not summoned by command, but called by witness. The court rushed toward the outer arches to see. Even Malric looked stunned by the number. Leora felt them, not their thoughts, their wounds. Chains hidden beneath ceremonial harnesses, bonds soured by fear, dragons loyal to riders who loved them, dragons obedient to houses that had starved them, dragons waiting, uncertain whether choice was allowed. The white flame mark over her heart pulsed. This was the climax Cassian had tried to prevent. Not his arrest, not his exposure. This, a kingdom standing before every creature it had claimed to command, suddenly forced to ask whether it had ever been chosen back. Malric looked at her. Can you do this? Leora watched the sky fill with dragons. No, she said honestly. His expression tightened. Then she added, not alone. He extended his hand, not to take, to offer. Leora looked at it for a long breath. The court watched. The dragon watched. All Ashbourne seemed to wait inside that space. Then she placed her hand in his. Together, they walked from the ember aviary into the dawn courtyard where the dragons had gathered. The black dragon followed behind them, like living night. On the highest tower, the first rider bond was brought forward. A young nobleman with shaking hands and a red dragon whose eyes had gone dull from years of obedience. Leora placed one hand against the dragon's snout. Malric placed one hand over the rider's bond ring. White flame and dragon fire met. The bond opened. For a terrible moment, the red dragon's pain flooded the courtyard. Hunger, fear, loyalty twisted by punishment. The rider fell to his knees, sobbing before the court could mock him. I did not know, he said. The red dragon stared at him. Then, slowly, the dragon lowered its head, not in submission, but in acceptance of the apology beginning too late. The bond remained, changed, chosen. The courtyard exhaled. The next bond broke entirely. A grey dragon stepped away from its rider and did not look back. Malric allowed it. The rider shouted in protest until the black dragon's growls silenced him. The third bond healed. The fourth dissolved. The fifth revealed hidden cruelty and led to immediate arrest. By the time the sun climbed over Ashbourne, the courtyard had become a living judgment. Not every dragon stayed. Not every rider was condemned. That mattered. Truth did not flatten everything into simple revenge. It separated fear from loyalty, command from trust, ownership from bond. Leora stood through all of it until her legs trembled. Malric saw. Enough for now. There are more. There will always be more. His voice lowered. You cannot heal a kingdom in one morning by bleeding through your feet. She looked down and realized the black stones beneath her were streaked with ash and the marks of her bare steps. Malric removed his cloak and placed it around her shoulders. The court saw. So did she. He did not touch her after, did not use the gesture to pull her closer, did not make care into claim. He simply stepped back and let warmth be warmth. That almost undid her. The black dragon lowered his massive head beside them. The throne waits. Leora looked toward the palace. For what? The dragon's golden eye turned to Malric, then to her, for both flames. The final trial had not been Cassian. It was the throne itself. The throne of Ashbourne had never allowed two flames to approach it together. That was the first law carved into the black steps, older than every living noble in the kingdom. One crown, one flame, one ruler. Kings had repeated those words until they became prayer. Priests had taught them until they became fear. Riders had sworn by them before binding dragons into service. And now, as Leora walked barefoot across the dawn-lit throne hall with Malric beside her, and the black dragon moving behind them like a storm given shape, every person present understood that the old law was about to be tested by the woman it had tried to kill. The hall had changed since the tribute ceremony. The white wedding silk torn at Leora's hem still brushed the same black marble where the court had expected her to die. The dragonbone arches still towered above the aisle. The braziers still burned along the walls, but the flames were no longer red. Each one burned white gold at the center, dark dragon fire around the edges, as if the palace itself could not decide which truth to obey. Lord Cassian had been taken below under guard, stripped of weapons and magic, but the damage he left behind remained. Nobles whispered in frightened clusters. Border envoys watched the throne like men, watching ice crack beneath their feet. Ash priests stood pale and silent, no longer certain whether their scriptures were law or evidence. Along the walls, dragon wardens, servants, and wounded riders gathered, drawn from the courtyard where bonds had been tested and remade. They had seen enough truth to fear what came next. Malric stopped at the base of the throne steps. Leora stopped beside him. For a moment, neither moved. The throne rose above them, black iron twisted with fossilized dragon wings, sharp enough to look less like a seat than a warning. At its back, an ancient flame-shaped hollow pulsed with dark light. Only Draven kings had ever placed their blood there. Only Draven kings had ever awakened the throne. The black dragon lowered his head. The throne remembers the first bond. Leora's white flame mark warmed over her heart. What happens if it rejects me? The court heard her. So did Malric. He looked at her. Not with command, not with the cold suspicion he had worn when she arrived as tribute, but with a steadier danger. A man who had learned that protection without trust could become another chain. Then it rejects us before witnesses, he said. A murmur passed through the hall. Us. Such a small word. Such a dangerous one. The oldest ash priest stepped forward, his hands trembling around a cracked staff. Your Majesty, no king has ever shared the throne right. Malric did not look away from Leora. Then no king has ever had reason enough. The priest swallowed. If the throne breaks, Ashbourne may lose crown fire entirely. Leora looked up at the black iron seat. And if it does not break, no one answered, because every answer frightened them. Malric drew the short ceremonial blade from his belt and cut his palm. Dark blood welled over his skin, brightened by dragonfire beneath it. He turned the blade and offered it to Leora, hilt first. She looked at it for a long breath. Her life had been decided by blades held by others. Her family had signed her away. Cassian had brought her here as a trap. The court had watched her in white silk and called it lawful. Now the blade rested in her choice. She took it and cut her own palm. White gold light rose from the wound. The hall went silent. Together, they climbed the throne steps. Every flame in the chamber leaned toward them. The black dragon followed only to the foot of the stairs, then lowered his head in witness. Malric placed his bleeding hand against the dark flame hollow first. The throne answered with a deep red glow. The walls trembled. Old crown fire woke. Then, Leora placed her hand beside his. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the throne screamed, not with sound, with memory. Leora saw kings forcing dragons to kneel. She saw queens erased from tapestries. She saw white flame healers burned as witches, tribute brides sent to die, dragon eggs cracked open for prophecy, border girls named cursed so powerful men could trade them like debts. She saw Malric as a boy, one hand on a dragon hatchling, swearing he would never become like the men who ruled before him. She saw the moment that promise bent under loneliness, war, and Cassian's careful poison. Malric saw it too. She felt him through the joined flame, his shame, his fury, his grief, his refusal to look away. The throne tried to separate them. Crown fire surged into Malric. White flame surged into Leora. The old law demanded one ruler, one flame, one command. Pain tore up her arm. Malric's hand tightened near hers, not gripping, not trapping, only staying. Leora heard Cassian's last warning inside her mind. He will need you, until the court fears you too much. The throne showed her a future where that could happen. Nobles demanding containment, priests demanding tests, Malric choosing stability over trust. White flame turned into another royal tool. The vision struck with cruel precision, because it was possible. Then Malric spoke through the fire. I renounce any crown that requires her silence. The throne cracked. The court gasped. Malric's voice carried through the hall, rough, with pain, but clear. I, Malric Draven, Dragon King of Ashbourne, swear before living dragon, freed dead, court, border, priest, servant, and flame. No dragon bond shall be made by fear. No bride shall be named tribute to hide murder. No bloodline shall be buried because it threatens a coward's throne. If crown fire cannot stand beside white flame, then let the old crown burn. The crack in the throne widened. Leora felt the white flame ask for her answer. She could claim. She could take. The dragon had called her queen. The throne was wounded. The court was frightened. Power stood open before her, waiting to be shaped. Instead, she spoke the truth that had carried her from Black Hollow to Ashbourne. I do not ask to own what was once used to own others, she said. I stand as witness. I stand as healer. I stand as the woman your laws tried to kill and failed to silence. Let every bond choose. Let every dragon speak. Let every king be worthy before he is obeyed. The throne split from base to crown. White flame and black flame erupted together, not destroying the whole, but burning through every hidden rune carved beneath the marble. Old command marks vanished from the walls. Dragon bond collars cracked in the courtyard beyond. Riders cried out as their bonds loosened, healed, or broke. In the aviary, the freed black dragon raised his wings and roared so powerfully the mountain answered. When the fire faded, the throne remained standing, but it had changed. The black iron had opened down the center, and inside the split burned two living flames braided together, crown fire and white flame, rule and witness, power and consent. Malric pulled his hand away first, shaking from the force of it. Leora nearly fell, but he did not catch her until she reached for him. Then his arm came around her, careful and strong. The court knelt, not all with love, not all with understanding. Some knelt in fear, some in awe, some because the dragon lowered his head and they followed what old instinct still lived in them. But the servants along the wall knelt last, not to the throne, to the truth that had finally stood inside it. Malric faced them all. Leora Vane will not be contained. She will not be crowned by force. She will stand as white flame witness of Ashbourne, equal before dragon law, protected from court seizure, and free to refuse any title placed upon her. Lord Edron bowed his head. And if she refuses queenship, Malric looked at Leora. This time the whole court saw him wait. Leora's heart trembled, not because she had no answer, but because for the first time, The answer belonged to her. "I refuse a crown today," she said. A ripple moved through the hall. "But I will remain. Not as tribute, not as curse, not as hidden blood." She looked at the dragon, then at Malric. "As witness." The black dragon's eye softened. "Queen is not always a crown." Later, when the court had emptied into frightened councils and urgent reforms, when Cassian had been sealed in the East Tower to await trial, when House Vane's envoy had been stripped of treaty privilege and forced to send word of public inquiry, Leora stood on the open balcony above Ashbourne. Dragons circled in the pale sky, some riderless, some bonded anew, some simply flying because no chain pulled them down. Malric came to stand beside her, leaving space between them. "I will not ask you to forgive me, because the throne changed," he said. "Good. I will not ask you to trust me because the dragon does. Better." A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. "I will ask only one thing." She looked at him. "Stay long enough to tell me when I begin sounding like a king who deserves to lose his dragon." Leora looked out over the kingdom that had bought her death and received her truth instead. She thought of Black Hollow, of the collar carved cursed, of her mother's lie that had saved her, of a dragon's voice calling her queen before she understood that a name could be invitation, not ownership. Then she looked at Malric. "I will stay," she said, "for now." His eyes warmed, dangerous and restrained. "For now is more mercy than I deserve." "Yes," she said softly. "It is." The black dragon roared above them, not in command, but in joy. Leora did not smile for the court. She did not need to. The cursed bride was gone. In her place stood the White Flame Witness, the woman who had walked into Ashbourne as tribute and made the Dragon King's throne answer to choice.